Okay, I do have something like a PowerPoint which I kind of cobbled together in the morning, and I don't know whether I'll go by the script or not. I think some of the themes today have been about disruption, so I don't know whether my talk would be a little disruptive. Maybe it would be, in which case, excuse me. But and while I'm associated with a number of organizations, my own, I'm Calcutta, etc., I speak purely on my own behalf, and I'm not speaking on anyone else's behalf. So I'll just share a few quick perspectives. I've also been told that we're running a bit short of time, and you've been told 15 minutes, so I'll try my best to stick to that. Okay. One of the important things that I think we need to keep in mind, I sense 2 or 3 things which is happening maybe in the last few years. One is, I'm encouraged by the fact that in this room there are a lot of people from IIMs, and the majority of them are either entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs or close to working in entrepreneurs, have been entrepreneurs, want to come back, which is great. But I don't think this is really representative of the larger IIM community. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. The majority of our friends, batchmates, colleagues are still pretty much safe and cushy corporate jobs. Good for them, good for their companies, good for the industry. But heaven only knows we need more entrepreneurs in our country, right? We need less job seekers and more job creators. But of course it's a tough, difficult thing. We've talked about what makes an entrepreneur. Is it passion? Is it the need for money and all of that? But from a slightly different perspective, I think one of the key challenges about the fact that can we have more entrepreneurs in India is the fact that we keep mentioning that India is an underdeveloped country, and that automatically raises a lot of challenges. India scores very low in ease of doing business. So one of the questions often thrown is, to set up a business, you got to kind of grease palms, bribe. It's so difficult to do business. I'd rather be safe and comfortable in a corporate job. Why take all that risk? Why go through all that problem of trying to set up on my own? And while that is true, I also think the fact that India is an underdeveloped country, there is a greater need for entrepreneurship. We need more entrepreneurs, and who better than people who've been trained in places like IIMs to have the managerial skills. Some of them, all of you, as we heard that it's easier to get investment if you have an IIM degree. We know that you have, most of us who are entrepreneurs may not have started off day one. We work for a few years. We have not just an education pedigree, we have experience, we have contacts, we have networks, we have batchmates. If with all of that, people like us don't become entrepreneurs, I don't know who else in India could. And the funny thing is that most of the entrepreneurs and the successful ones in the long run are not people of our profile. I mean, this is a new breed which is just coming about and may the breed increase. But the other thing is there are greater opportunities. I mean, there's always a flip side of problem versus opportunity, which leads to my next point. A country of problems is a country of opportunities. Now, everything that we look at, and unfortunately, I think sometimes we follow the Western paradigm too closely. One is in terms of looking at, if there's a mobile app business in the US, somebody will try to replicate it in India. And we far too often, following the whole Silicon Valley kind of experience, including the kind of funding we're getting. And the other issue is the fact that, this whole thing about scale and money, and I heard Mr. Negi say, and I heard this question come up, is saying that there are all kinds of entrepreneurs, and not everybody needs to become a Flipkart, not everybody needs to have a high valuation. In fact, countries like the US and Germany have been really built up on small and medium businesses who more or less bootstrap themselves and been reasonably successful. They haven't achieved huge scale. And I think that really distorts the whole business of entrepreneurship when we only look at VCs who want disproportionate high returns. That stops a lot of other small and medium businesses and opportunities. We heard of this example of this, the funeral service. Now, I'm not sure it can be a $500 million or $5 billion enterprise, but sure there's an opportunity. And I think more you're seeped into India and India country. I mean, we talked of funeral. I know somebody who's created a Indian wedding mobile app, and Indian weddings are very different. They're much more complicated than other countries' weddings. So I think somebody who's thought of creating a mobile app there is a smart person. So I think a country of problems, and this is where also the question of social entrepreneurship comes up. We have so many problems, therefore there are so many chances of solving those problems, and some of them can be money-making enterprises, some of them can be altruistic enterprises, and people like us who make money should also support that, and we don't need to hit $1 billion before we start thinking altruism. I heard this thing being said that at some stage when you made a lot of money, the people like the Premjis and the Infosys founders have now, not all of them, but some of them have found it worthwhile to start putting in money. But I think that attitude, because the whole question of how much is enough, and when do you say this is it? Do you do it when you cross, 10 crores of savings? Do you do it when you cross 40 years of age? And I honestly think the later the worse, because it takes far too long for a lot of us to realize that, call it success, happiness, it's not on that straight and narrow path. It's got to be something more individual and personal. So at a different level, I teach and I have some of my students here. I try to get this thought, what you talked about in your group, your professor talking about, is something that I try to teach 22-year-old kids, saying that, start thinking about what really make you happy. And it's not going to be really money, and not too much of money anyway. You need certain amount of money for sustenance, but beyond that, you've got to find your own path to happiness. And often your path to happiness has got to connect it with other people's, contributing to other people's happiness, right? So I think we have a lot of problems, and if we start solving those problems, there are business opportunities, but also opportunities for our own satisfaction and sustenance. The other thing which is also, I think, very, very disproportionate today is this whole thing of, there are these few people who want to, get rich quickly and become billionaires. I think it's a very disproportionate, unequitable, unfair, and disbalanced growth which we are talking about in our country, which leads to, we have to carry everyone forward. Otherwise, we'll have a society which is going to create a lot of social problems when you have, penthouses next to slums. And we've been talking about, we're sitting on a ticking time bomb. If you're not able to carry, a significant proportion of the 1.2 billion people in our country and only create those little pockets of wealth, not only is it unfair, it is unsustainable in the long run. And somewhere I think we are creating a new kind of class and caste system, and I don't think that's sustainable. I think we should address our intelligence and our capabilities to actually, if you're talking of scale, talk of scale not of impacting people's lives, not in terms of billions of dollars. The other thing we have to talk about increasingly is the fact that, again, aping the Western model is going to create all kinds of problems. Getting more and more luxury cars and more whatever in the road is not going to solve problems. It's going to create more pollution, more lifestyle-related diseases. So we have to find alternatives which are not necessarily aping. While the Western world is kind of turning back on some of the systems and things that they've created, we are trying to ape them. And very often, the way the money flows is really about replicating Western systems and concepts. So we need to have long-term sustainability. What is going to work in our country, across the world? In that context, I think there has got to be a focus on, we've been very poor in creating products, creating IP, and creating global businesses. In this context, I think, we this new thing about Make in India, and we're trying to get a lot of people to Make in India. One of the challenges I feel is the fact that the Made in India brand is still pretty poor. China has suffered for a long time, right? We pay a lot of money for Apple, but not half as much for a Chinese brand, simply because, made in China is not as good as made in America, made in USA. Except China, we know Apple products are all made in China. So somehow the Made in India brand is not strong enough, which is not going to help us become a global player till we also build the brand around our own country and what we stand for. And I think, except IT services, it's been a pretty weak brand till now. We also have, this is where I think all of us have to come together. So we talked about, institutions like Calcutta, Ahmedabad, all of us have now got incubators, we are creating mentor networks. So one of the things that alumni of IIMs can do is join their old institutes and becoming mentors for entrepreneurs when you have incubation systems and they come within those institutes. Of course, we've talked a lot about funders, but we have to talk about a whole lot of other enabling ecosystems. From mentors to shared services, all of this can come together. We are now trying to create, for example, in our Calcutta system where students can actually volunteer their time working with all kinds of entrepreneurs, including social entrepreneurs, and actually help them while learning this tricks of how to become an entrepreneur. Get some real first-hand experience of working with an entrepreneur while you're a student. We actually in our Calcutta looking at creating a panel of, starting with this year, 10 students who IIM Calcutta Innovation Park will have as interns and give out to entrepreneurs for free. So the internship will be paid by IIM Calcutta, but they are going to work with entrepreneurs. So we are actually trying to push as far and as much as we can whole entrepreneurship culture among students, and we have to get right from students up to mentors. And I think the IIM community is an amazingly powerful community from mentorship to student volunteering, whatever, we can do a lot for the entrepreneurship. And even before and even apart from ourselves being entrepreneurs, we can do a lot to support entrepreneurs. And this is the point I was making. A few growth pockets, a few Silicon Valleys in Gurgaon and Bangalore, that's not really going to sustain a large nation like India. One of the interesting things I discovered a few years back when I was doing a research on the top 50 or 100 companies in US is that the top 100 companies of US are spread across, believe it or not, more than 40 cities, right? So you have a company like P&G, which is in Cincinnati. You have a company like Coca-Cola, which is in Atlanta. Guess what? Atlanta is the 33rd largest city in the US. Can you imagine a world-class company out of the 33rd largest city in India? And India is as large, if not a larger country in the US. Why do everything has to concentrate back into Delhi, Gurgaon, NCR, and Bombay, Bangalore? Why can't we spread ourselves? Why can't we create pockets of growth everywhere? Why does everything converge here? And that's really not going to be sustainable. That's not going to help create a whole nation of growth. That's going to create only pockets of growth. And that's not going to help the nation. We also need to innovate for India and for Indians. And with Indians, we have to create our own unique Indian models. And I think aping the West is not going to do. I found this quote and I found it brilliant, which says, a developed country is not a place where the poor have cars, which is what we're trying our best to aim. It's where the rich use public transportation. And India is definitely a country where more cars is not going to help. It's so obviously, I mean, everyone will walk, all of us have cars and we drive around. Don't we realize having more cars is really, really a suicidal thing we're getting into? And yet we manufacture more cars and sell bigger, more luxury cars because we can afford them. Irrespective of what it's doing to the environment, what it's doing to the roads, what it's doing to the entire ecosystem. We have to think out of the box. We cannot imitate the Western model, which will not work in India. And I think a lot has to do with developing grassroots. We talk about IIT and tech level entrepreneurs, but the reality is the best challenge for us is to develop grassroots level entrepreneurs, and that's something that we're trying to do some work. And it's interesting, and we're working with the government in West Bengal. One of the biggest challenges, more than any other state in West Bengal, is Bengalis by nature are not entrepreneur at all. So we've been racking our brains to think, how do we create West Bengal, Bengalis who want to become entrepreneurs? And ideas we've come up with are as out of the box, as bizarre as saying that, can we create a reality show of entrepreneurship which will make entrepreneurship sexy and cool and desirable in a state which traditionally people all want to be poets and artists and nothing beyond that, or work for government. So we're thinking like that, but we have to think out of the box. We have to have innovative solutions for our country which work within our country. We cannot take a Silicon Valley model and replicate it in India, and even if it works, it will work only in minor growth pockets. And this is a quote from Muhammad Yunus, which I think is wonderful, and this applies to our country. All human beings are entrepreneurs. We were in caves, we were all self-employed, finding our food, feeding ourselves. Somewhere this whole comfort of having a job and security. And the worst thing is the people that, IIM graduates want that comfort and security. And Mr. Negi talked about, we actually have the best safety net. If people like us are not going to be entrepreneurs. The funny thing is people who don't have safety net, people who don't have options, become entrepreneurs because there is no plan B. And we always look for a safety of plan B, and that's why we don't take the risk. But I think the trick is not for huge valuation. The trick is in our country, if you can create a lot of micro entrepreneurs. If in every village people had a good entrepreneurship for which they did not have to leave their village and become landless laborers or workers, migrant laborers working for building big houses in Gurgaon. I think that's where there is a whole lot of social migration, there are a lot of social problems which is happening because we are not encouraging micro entrepreneurship. And the truth is, if we create 100, 1,000 micro entrepreneurs, 5 of them, 10 of them will actually become the next, maybe not the billion, but the million. And maybe that's the way. We need to spread entrepreneurship at a grassroots level. And I think today we have a very, very elitist, very small, scalable, VC-funded view of entrepreneurship. And that's a very limited way. And we have to stop looking at that as the primary way of creating entrepreneurship in a country as vast as India. So Indian problems need Indian solutions. I think we need to think out of the box. I think we need to break out of this mindset of VC funding, and that's the only way. I think I heard Ms. Negi say a lot of entrepreneurs need to be just bootstrapped. They don't need to become billionaires. They need to be able to sustain themselves. They need to give jobs to 10, 20, 40 people in their own community. They need to stay back in their own community and not have to rush to Bangalore or Gurgaon to build the next billion-dollar company. And that's how this whole nation would prosper. And the other problem is, of course, the demographic dividend. We talk about how being it's a great thing, but we're also talking about so many millions of people who need to be given jobs And if we don't create, and if all those jobs are going to be concentrated in a few pockets like Bangalore and Gurgaon, we know what an urban nightmare we're going to have. So we need to create entrepreneurs who will create jobs across the length and breadth of this country. And they all need to be sustainable. And they all need to be interlinked through their own entrepreneurial network of vendors and suppliers and whatever. And they need to, each region needs to be self-sustainable, and they need to have their own network of entrepreneurs who can work that time. And I think somehow we are missing that whole trick. I think most of us are not looking at that vision of India, where it's a nation of entrepreneurs, where everybody does their own thing. A few of them, and there's a hierarchy, a few of them really become big and serious. But as you said, true entrepreneurs, at least a lot of them, or most of them, are not in it for the money. They're in it for other things, the passion, the joy, the independence, whatever. The money comes in. But I think today, the VC-funded thing, a lot of people are becoming entrepreneurs. It personally worries me when I see an entrepreneur who's beginning a business who's already thinking of exit, and at what price, and what value. Because I think that's a very distorted way of starting something. I mean, it's almost like getting into business, getting into a marriage saying, so when do I quit, and what's the prenuptial agreement, how much money can I make? To me, I mean, if it's passion, how can you be passionate something that you're already thinking of exiting? To me, it sounds like a distorted thing, and I don't think that's what I mean, some people want to make money, that's good, but if that's the view of entrepreneurship that a lot of young people are today getting tempted about, it personally worries me. I would have shared some experiences, but I'd rather stop here and let there be some Q&A. And frankly, I think we need to create a different kind of future in terms of entrepreneurship. And I don't think there is anyone better than the people who have connected with IIM, so alumni of IIM, to do something really big, really important. Because we have the knowledge, we have the skills, we have the network, we have the contacts. Some of us have the money. If we don't do it, I don't know who else will for the country like us. Thank you.